This what system is this? I hadn't
It's
seen this.
StreamYard.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Thanks.
It's got all the standard stuff, but in different places. But
Yeah.
good stuff. Yeah. I'm gonna hit mute on the camera and get some coffee. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right, we can get started, Preston. All right, how y'all doing, everybody? Welcome to People Power Hour. My name is Terrell McKinney, and as you know, I'm running for the state legislature in District 11. Tonight, I have a special guest, Mr. Preston Love Jr., who is also running. He's running for the U.S. Senate. How you doing, Preston? You still on mute?
I'm doing real fine, and I want you to know that I say some of my most important statements when I'm muted.
That's good. For those who are not aware of who you are, I think most people know who you are, but just give a little brief history of yourself.
Well, probably most importantly, I'm a native Omahan, and I grew up with a plastic spoon in my mouth, not a silver or gold. But I grew up in North Omaha and all of its red line, discriminated bigotry, but wonderful community of North Omaha. I grew up in Logan Fountainelle Home. And by the way, just for the record, Bob Gibson and I grew up in Logan Fountainelle. And Ed Poindexter and I grew up in Logan Fountainelle. So I'm a homegrown guy, went to Omaha Tech. And of course, many know that I played football for Nebraska and worked for IBM for 15 years, had a computer store in Atlanta, and worked on some of the most iconic campaigns historically. I was an advisor to Andrew Young, Ambassador Andrew Young, when he became mayor of Atlanta. I was an advisor to Harold Washington in 83 and 87. He, of course, was the first Black mayor of Chicago. I was a close aide of his outside government. I was the 1984 organizer and campaign manager for Jesse Jackson in 1984, was the first executive director of his Rainbow Coalition, which he still runs, calls it Rainbow Push now. Mm-hmm. And I've worked in the vineyards all these years, 40 years to be exact. I am a university professor. I've written 5 books. I am a lecturer and a regular author. But more importantly, I have served for most of my adult life, at least half of it. I've been given service to the community, lived in the community, moved back to Omaha in 2006, Terrell
Mhm.
and Terrell, and have been dedicated to service in my community for all these years now. So my candidacy is just an evolution, uh, and albeit short, because I
What
announced with only 6 days later.
what you know, you mentioned you played for Nebraska. What got you into doing organizing work and working in politics coming from a sports background?
Yeah. Well, when I was playing ball and afterwards even working for IBM, Terrell, I'm a little ashamed, but I'll admit and tell you because I know nobody's listening. But that it was all about me and me. I was just about fast cars, fast women if I could find some, new outfits, just whatever, just about Preston
Mhm.
for that period of my life. When I when life took me into Atlanta, uh, I was introduced. So to answer your question, I wasn't about organizing, and even not even about community. I was about Preston.
Mhm.
And but when I moved to Atlanta and began immersed in the civil rights community there and the latter part of the movement, was transformed in terms of where I was coming from and what I was about. And so organizing was something that evolved out of my relationships with all and so many of the iconic civil rights people you may have known because I wrote an article on it, but that John Lewis and I were very dear friends and
Mhm.
worked together in Atlanta. But all of those people, including John, changed my focus, changed my mind, changed my attitude. And so I began to organize because I learned to organize from some of the better organizers. And so when I came home, it was already my new DNA.
Right. So what have you been working on since you've been back home?
Well, when I first came back, I just kind of frailing around and really uh, didn't want to have a job. But I really came back home. My dad had just died, Preston Love Sr. My mother had Alzheimer's. I came home to just kind of be with family. In a funny kind of way, in my mind, I was retired, you know. And
Mhm.
so, and then when I got back to Rail, I saw what you see with a community that needed leadership. It needed work. Us out to vote. Uh, we suffered from all the disparities that you can think about because of poverty and lack of investment. And so I got activated and started. Uh, well, I started Black Votes Matter, but not by that name. I was a North Omaha voter participation project at first,
Mhm.
and just began to organize, as you say, and talk to people about getting out to vote, how important the vote was. Our voting turnout when I came back in 2006, horrible for years. The only thing that made it change for a minute was the 2008 race by Obama, but
Yeah.
then it fell off. If you know the statistics, and maybe I'll share it real quickly with your audience. In 2008, the Black community turned out at 62%. That was pretty good. That excellent. The rest of the county turned out at 72%. But but in 62%, that was pretty good for where we had been. But in 2012, we fell off to 58, and then 2020 and in 2016, we fell off to 47.
Mhm.
So we still have work. You've got work. I've got work.
Yeah.
Intergenerational work. And let me just say this to you in front of your audience that I have so love for you. And I mean that not because you're paying me so much to be on your show, but that because the problem that our community has, Terrell, is that we're not taking advantage of our assets. And let me give you what I mean by that. Our community assets include our young energy, creativity, and willingness to stand up and fight for what's right. That's an asset. You are an asset in that regard. But also, I'm an asset. I'm an elder. I'm wise and have done the things when I was young and the wisdom. Now, what is the problem? The problem is we don't interconnect that well.
Yep.
And not enough. And so if we did, we take advantage of both assets and we become so much stronger. That's why I'm giving you the compliment, because what I've noticed in you is not the tendency to think because you're young and have good ideas and so forth that you know it all, can do it all. You don't need to seek counsel from the old folks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a mistake that the community makes. And I compliment you for not making that mistake. And because of that, you and I work good together. And I'm sure down the road, we'll continue to work till I fall off my wheel. But to say it serious way, why I complimented you, because for some reason you have realized that. And then let me say that many of the community elders and leaders who are not maybe as old as I, but close, have not realized that their role in that package. Mm-hmm. And so we're missing our strength. And so let's work on that.
Definitely. I always try to tell people that it takes all of us. It doesn't mean it needs to be all young people or it needs to be all of our elders. I think it takes all of us to change our community. It's not nobody has all the answers and no generation has all the answers. But if we can work together and work on solutions, I think we'll be better off. So thank you.
Yeah. It's a very serious comment that I hope that your viewers and listeners would think about.
Definitely. This year,
as hard as I work, let me just add this. As hard as I work and the service I give, I still go to meetings, used to, not as much anymore, where they say, oh, old man, you go away. You had just dismiss the elders. And that's a mistake. And there's the same mistake that I could make by saying, y'all don't know what you're doing. You're too young. Two mistakes. But we don't have to make them. And we're smart enough not to make them. And it's unique that whatever the screen looks like, it is just the answer to what I'm suggesting. It's intergenerational working together for the betterment of the community in our own ways, and in some ways individually, in some ways collaboratively.
Definitely. This year has been one for the ages. Can you speak to how you've been able to navigate through this year?
Well, it's been tough. There's a lot of different can respond to that. You have 3 hours?
Yeah.
Not. But let me just say that one of the things that, well, first, let me just say one of the things that I do regularly is I write. I'm getting to be more of a prolific writer. I'm not really a writer. I just have a voice and I put it on paper. I have written some very serious editorials for the Omaha World Herald on this subject. But one of the points I want to make, and I just thought of the articles, is that things that I've known for years is the disparities that are wrought upon our people and other peoples of color that we've known. You're learning, and I've known and know. We've known it for years. The disparities of healthcare and delivery systems and access to healthcare and mental health. The disparities in mass incarceration in our criminal justice system, which puts people in prison that mainly labor for 50 cents an hour nowadays. And that's the new indentured servitude, by the way, but mass incarceration, the policing, police, and all of that, education disparities, and on and on. These are factors, Terrell. I'm not changing the subject of your question, but what has happened is that they have become obvious to more people than they were because the COVID has brought it all out, and people walk around forgetting that it was there or not even aware of the disparity. They're aware of it now because we're preaching it and telling them and hold up our hands and saying, "Get your knee off my neck," in so many ways other than just Mr. Blake. And so, what have I been doing is I have tried to work with some of our leadership in the community to fashion solutions for our community to mitigate some of those disparities because of the COVID. We should have been doing it before, and we did not come together like we should. And we have, amazingly so, in this community, with us being maybe 12, 13%. We have 2 blacks on the health county health board. One, I think, the chairman. We have a former president of the city council, former chairman of the Douglas County. We have a healthcare delivery system. We have so many people who are black folks who are in charge of things, school board, all of that, superintendent. We have the power to really handle some business. We're not only in the room, we're conducting the meetings. Right. We don't have the mass, but we have people there. And so, but we haven't unified our efforts towards the direction of serving our people until now. I think we're really kind of stepped up. And I've been involved in some of that, and so have you. And so that's part of that. The other part is my initiative, Terrell, that I think you know about. I want really to talk to you about maybe participating as a counselor. But every year I take 50 or so high school kids, about my tour.
Yep.
But we take them to Memphis and Jackson, Mississippi, and Birmingham, and Tuskegee, Selma, Edmund Pettus Bridge, Montgomery, Atlanta, and back, all expenses paid. We teach our youth about something they don't know about, which is their Black history, unfortunately, and we transform them. So I'm involved in that. Of course, I've written some books. I've written a children's book dealing with Black history and all of that. So I've been heavily involved in that. And of course, I'm always working, it's a year-round job, to try to educate and be proactive, trying to get our people out to vote. This year, we can talk about my candidacy, but it surely was not something that I dreamed of or was on my bucket list or even whatever. So when we get there, if you want to talk about it, I can. But when you asked about my activities, I was involved and still am about the bigger issue of getting our vote out. And maybe I could take a minute when you want me to talk about what I think is at stake in this election.
Let's first I would like, how did you feel about the rallies and the protests that occurred not only in Omaha but across the nation? How did that make you feel as an elder?
Well, I've been through it. Let me answer it in one word: deja vu. I've been there. Uh, I've been there. Uh, I've been in the front of the line, in the middle of the line, in the back of the line, but I've been in the crowd years past. I wasn't really there in the these days, but it's not because of my anything other than I just don't have the legs and the energy to walk from 72nd Dodge downtown.
Yeah.
I mean, really, seriously, that's part of it, and plus the COVID piece of it. But I'm encouraged. Is really the answer to your question, and proud that we have that activism that I thought we had lost as a community. So I've been really emboldened or encouraged by the activism is what that is. I want to comment for those who maybe were leaders or active in those marches that two things I observed. One is that one of the challenges we have in 2020 in our marches is we get people come in and try to co-opt what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Co-opt the march, co-opt the agenda, and maybe do some shenanigans that have nothing to do and no focus on why we were marching in the first place, whether it be in Minnesota or Kentucky or right here. They changed the narrative, and I don't like that. And we've got to police that going forward because they give the enemy, if you want to call them that, an excuse. They'll just make us all that. When we're marching for justice and change and reform, they're changing that narrative. And I don't like that. And some of them are doing it on purpose to change the narrative. Some of them are just acting crazy. But I am so much of a historical and present fan of activism. That's what that is. The second point I want to make that I want to emphasize for any of your listeners that are and watchers is that the activism must have another component in my humble estimation and really my wisdom. And that is when you start the march, I feel you should have an agenda of what it is that you want to do. Part of the march is to just demonstrate and let folks know you ain't gonna take it no more. And we just standing up. But that is what do we want to have done as a result. For example, when they marched across the bridge in Selma, what was the agenda? It was to get the right to register and vote. When they marched in Birmingham, what was the agenda? To get public accommodations and civil rights and on and on. You got my point. Mm-hmm. And so we have things to march about, but we need to be positioned to have the conversations. In the case of the old civil rights days, there were Martin Luther King had all these lieutenants. Some of them were tough, man. They wore Billy overall and they were ready to fight. He was nonviolent, but they weren't. And so, but they had Andrew Young and some others waiting in the wings. So when white folks got tired of them acting up, they wanted to sit down and work it out. So I'm suggesting that have somebody ready to negotiate the victory. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, speak to the importance of this because before I say that, that's one of the reasons I decided to run for office, because I realized that being an activist and being an organizer had some type of ceiling. I didn't want to be knocking on the door. I wanted to do whatever I can to put myself in the door and at the table, so then I could speak to the issues that we're fighting for in the streets. And that's really why I decided to run. I was like, I could complain all day and be upset with local politicians and politicians in general, or I could try to do whatever I can to put myself in that position to better assist our community. Speaking to the importance of this election, I've been saying it lately, and I kind of said it all summer, is that we have to take the protests into the polls. We're upset with a few local officials that we don't feel as though have done the right thing, but we also have to understand that we have to get out and vote. If we want change, we have to vote some people out. It's just not going to happen with us screaming in the streets.
If you're looking for a comment out of me, the only thing I can say is amen. But you're absolutely right. But let me, I just augmented, but you said it well, Terrell. It is a combination of things. We got to get in the streets, let them know we're not going to take this, and we got to show them in mass. But that's not it. That's not the final. We have to be able to bust in some doors, and I mean that figuratively. And some of those doors are in the political processes. And it's okay to be in the room when the politicians are making their decision and we are in mass and we stand up and we raise sand in that room. But oh boy, are we better off if we're sitting up around the table trying to help make that decision. And so it's a combination.
Right.
And so you're right. We've got to understand that it's not either or. And you know what? We have to understand that we've got to support our community and make that step. What I'm saying, if you were able to be elected for the Legislative District 11, the people need to stop right there and start supporting you because you're there. Some of the things that our community has done in the past is once you get somebody elected, then you start picking at them. Mm-hmm. And then you wonder why they, don't go all out for you. It needs to, we need to support. Even if we got problems with them, let's pull them aside and say, man, such and such. But we need to support, because when you stand up in front of that legislature body and make a point that is for your community that maybe a third of that crowd don't want to hear, you got to know that your community is behind you. And the community needs to be behind you. That's politics 101. Mm-hmm. And so the lesson is first, the lesson you stated is that you can make a difference in those rooms. That's not the only answer, but it is surely one of them. I made the point that right now in this city, I don't care what you think of the people, but we have a Black president of the city council. That's power. Now, we ain't talking about whether you like the suit they wear or maybe you don't even like them. They still there. And if you get behind them, they're going to do a better job for the community. We got a president of the council, of the commission, and same thing, and over, city council. And so we need to take advantage of when we got what we got. And so if we have to run against each other, that's okay. And whoever wins, we get behind them. So we're going to have a Black. Let me tell you how smart I am, Terrell. I am so smart that I can assure you we'll have a Black representing Legislative District 11. So what does that mean? It means figure out who you want to be for, vote for them, and whoever wins, get behind them. Because they're gonna be there for 4 years. You can't go on vacation and wait till they get chance to get reelected for we go ask them and push them to hold their feet to the fire to give service to the community. So vote and get your one that you want in there. That's the first thing, and then get behind whoever wins.
Yep.
And I say that with the exception of the president of the United States. Don't get behind Trump if you get. So excuse me for being partisan on your show.
What's at stake in this upcoming election?
Well, let me start from the top and move down.
Okay.
Probably the most important thing, there are Democrats and there are Republicans. And I don't believe in voting Democrat just because. If it's whoever's best for our community is who we ought to vote for. We tend to gravitate towards the Democrats. That's okay. But I wanted to go on the record saying that. But in this particular case at the top, it's not Democrat or Republican, it's Trump. It's get him out of there. That's what's saying. And why is that? Well, for one, he's lying. He's a racist. He's putting the country in crazy shape. He's not showing any leadership, costing lives on the COVID, and on and on and on. That's my view of him. So at the very top, get this guy out. But let me tell you what else is at stake. The Supreme Court. Let me tell you, your viewers and listeners, that the Supreme Court are appointed for a lifetime. So if you have the Supreme Court with a whole lot of conservative judges, it will impact our lives for one or two generations. Very. Let me give you an example. Right now, on the agenda for the Supreme Court is the affordable health care, which our community needs, and it needs to be expanded. And also, we're expanding Medicare extension. It took a long time, but if the Supreme Court is another conservative judge is on there, we're probably going to lose that. And all of our friends and family and 20 million others around the country are going to be left in the void. That's one thing big. That's another thing big at stake. Big one at stake. There's also, I don't know what the audience's view is on abortion and the woman's right to choose, but Roe versus Wade will be on the agenda. Probably be undone. But for Black folks, they every time the court gets more conservative, they unravel another aspect that was gained during the Civil Rights era. For example, in 1965, probably one of the most significant acts of Congress was the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, followed the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And, by the way, was followed by the 1968 Fair Housing Act. But in the 1965 Voting Rights Act was powerful. And I could go into the details, trust me. And as a result of it, a whole lot of things happened. Black elected officials skyrocketed after the 1965. And Blacks began to run and winning in cities all over the country. Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972, Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88, and many other, and ultimately Obama in 2000. All of that came from the 1965 Voting Rights Act. But guess what happened in 2013? The Supreme Court took all the teeth out of that. And it now it doesn't work. Let me give you one prime example. Sorry to give you such a long answer.
You okay?
But in Texas, the largest county in Texas had 11 drop boxes for you to put your ballot. Just reduced that down to one, the largest county. And so if you lived in a certain part of the county, take an hour to drive to the drop box and an hour to drive back. But guess what that was? That's voter suppression.
Yep.
But under the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Texas could not have done that. The Justice Department would have prevented. So when they dismantled it in 2013, that allowed Texas and other states to do all kind of crazy stuff. That's the impact. What is at stake? So the other thing is the makeup of Congress, so that if a Democrat, Mr. Biden, and historically Kamala Harris are elected, they're going to hopefully do the right thing. But they won't be able to do the right thing if they don't have a strong Congress behind them. So we need to have a strong supporting Senate and a strong supporting House. In the case of what does that mean here? It means electing Eastman to the Congress. It could mean electing me to the Senate. I don't have a good chance of winning. But it could mean if a miracle would happen that I would be elected. I'm surely going to say that my candidacy is helping Cara Eastman and Joe Biden, because I'm helping bring out the black vote in my candidacy. But my point is that what's at stake is the makeup of Congress that will support the new president and vice president if they're elected. That's very important, what's at stake. So those are just off the top of my head. But not only this rush to judgment on the Supreme Court nominee, the other thing that's at stake is that we get a fair hearing and some programmatic change and reform. All the things that we are marching for have to be articulated into programs, and they can be if we have a favorable administration and a favorable Congress. Change and reform is cute if we don't do nothing about it. And so change and reform, you know who's responsible for it? Partly is the winner of Legislative District 11. You got part of that responsibility if you win.
Yeah.
And so, but really, partly the decision that people need to make in that election, first of all, they need to vote. But the other part is, who do you think, what's important to you? Well, change and reform seems to be policing and that, all of that. So who's going to be the best candidate to handle that business when they get down to the legislature? It's the question. It's not about how you spell McKinney or how you spell Connolly. It's about who best can represent the needs and the wants and the desires of the people. But just knowing that is not enough. You got to get your little heinies out and vote. And so that's at stake, because there's stuff going on that can go on. And initiatives, the legislature is about playing offense and defense. You want to put a sports analogy in it. And so it's to put some new programs down to institute change and reform, but also to play defense about stuff crazy stuff. You know, one of the things right now is we're trying to get Ed Poindexter out. He's been in jail for 50 years for a crime he didn't do. He's a political prisoner. He's sick. He's 75 years old, and the COVID might kill him. let's get him out of there. And so the more friends we got in the legislature, we can put pressure on the executive branch and get Ed Poindexter out. It's all of that stuff wrapped into your vote. And so that's the short list of what's at stake.
One quick question. I'm not aware of anything, but I'm sure you probably are. Has anybody tried to introduce any legislation to re-up the Voting Rights Act to make it better and counter the Supreme Court?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And if Democrats win the House and Senate, it's going to get done. There's a couple of things that are going to get done, including statehood for D.C. I believe this finally. But yes, it's the restoration is what they're calling it, the restoration of the 1965. It's going to be a new bill, but they're calling it the restoration of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So yes, that's in play. That's the teeth. The things that are going on now, the new Jim Crow, this thing that they're doing in Texas, these things they did in Wisconsin where they reduced all of the polling places down to one and made people stand in line for 4, 5, 6 hours. All of that stuff. That's the new Jim Crow. And so none of that would be possible if we could restore the teeth to the 1965 Voting Rights Act. There's a lot of this stuff that Trump is talking about with the post office, all that to be out. That would be off limits if we can restore it.
How do you think we should handle COVID post-election?
Say that again.
How do you think we should handle COVID post the election?
Oh, post the election.
Yes.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with who gets elected. Let's say that Trump is reelected. I just have no confidence in his leadership or his will to even deal with it in a leader sort of way, to set policy and structure and programmatic things to help the states. And if they don't want to be helped, to make them do the right thing, because that's what is needed. And that's what other countries have done. If they just taken the bull by the horn, if you will, and set the policy. So if he is reelected, then communities, in this case, let's just say it real. Let's just say that here we are in December or January of 2021, and Trump wins the election. The responsibility is going to be more and more that the community picks up the leadership to save our folks from the health and feeding, evictions, mental health, all the things that go with COVID besides the disease itself. We've got to take the ball, Terrell, and I hope we're ready to step up to do so. I saw good signs so far. If Biden and Harris win, I think they will try to do that. They will listen to science, and on that and maybe many other things. But on the COVID, it's not going to be easy, but I would feel more confident because I don't even if Trump suggested a good solution, I don't believe him anymore. I don't have the confidence that he's not running game. And so to bring it down like we talk. And so I'd be hesitant to take the vaccine. If he said, "Oh, this is it," I'd be hesitant to take it. So we just need a better leadership and try to affirm all of these agencies like the FDA and the CDC that have all the exports that we're just ignoring. It's a horrible situation. But it may be that we have to pick up and almost take the destiny of our community in all ways in our own hands.
The election is a few weeks. what do you think can be done to make sure that either individuals are sending back their ballots by election day, or B, making sure that we getting people to the polls, the ones that elect not to vote by mail?
Yeah. Well, um, good question. First of all, every year since 2006 when I moved back home, I've been getting ride to the polls every year, and every election, I should say. Every election, we take lots of people ride to the polls, ride to the polls. We have drivers. We have, we just do it.
Yeah.
This year in a primary and in the general, I said to my community, I'm not going to do a ride because you need to vote by mail. It was a tough decision to make because some
Yeah.
people said, "What? I need a ride." I said, "You don't need no ride. You need to vote by mail." So I got some people push back on me, but so I'm not giving rides. I'm saying, no, don't go to the poll. Get your ballot sent to your house. But I'll come back and tell you there is a reality to that. Everybody's not going to do it. But so I'm really making a case that I hope people see the advantage of voting by mail. One is that you don't have to stand in the lines, even if it's going to be a long line and unnecessary, and you don't have to take the chance of getting the virus and while you're trying to vote, and it's so convenient. So I'm really making that case. And I want to say quickly that all of the stuff about the post office could be true in other places. Pretty much in Douglas County, we're going to be okay. So don't worry about that, because a lot of people are saying, no, I'm scared now because Trump then psyched us out. And in some cases, it ain't psyching out. Go ahead.
I was telling people, because heard those same comments on the phones, and I'd say still, apply to get a vote by mail ballot and just go drop it off at the ballot box at the library.
At the drop boxes, yeah.
Right.
Yes. Well, I was going to come to that, but you're right. Yeah. So don't worry, don't let that stop you. But let me say this is very important. When we think of drop boxes for the election commission, all of us think 29th and Ames, right outside the library. But we have another one now, and that is right up there between Goodwill and Hobby Lobby, right in that area, right there off 72nd. There's a drop box that is kind of towards the street. But if you come in and go in like you're going to Hobby Lobby and kind of look to your left or west, there is a box there. And so we now have two in the community. Use the drop boxes. We're picking up ballots for seniors and people who can't get around all the time. They don't need to put a stamp on it. They don't need to worry about the postage. We pick them up, throw them in that drop box for them. Picked up 55 of them yesterday. I don't know how many of them voted for you. I should have asked, but just as a service, so they won't have to worry about it. And so we're not trying to give rides. To be very honest with you, in the primary don't tell nobody, but I gave 2 rides. But because if I had to, I would. But I don't want to. I'm trying to act like a, but I'm not.
I appreciate that. Before we get out of here, is there anything you want to leave the viewers with?
Yes, I want to put a plug in for myself. If you do want to vote for me, and I surely would hope that you would see the wisdom of voting for an African American in Nebraska for the United States Senate. I would hope that you see that, and so therefore you'd want to vote. But mine, because of circumstances that led up to my candidacy, that only started 55 days ago. By the way, Terrell, I started 55 days and I had $55. But that you have to write me in. And so let me just take a 30 seconds. So when you get your ballot, so many people need to be taught this. You go ahead and look for the United States Senate race, which is the next one underneath the president. You won't see my name. That's the mistake, is you'll look for Preston Love. I'm not there. You have to write my name in and just write love. and then fill in the oval on the left-hand side. That's very instructional. I hope that you remember that, because I've already had a couple real close friends of mine who made the mistake of not knowing that they figured I changed my mind. I don't know what they thought, but they really missed what a write-in really means. You
Yeah.
have to write in the name. And so the way that the election commission works, you don't even have to write in my whole name, just write in love. But you have to fill in that box. But so my candidacy, I surely affirm. But my real message as we close is just see and listen to all the things that we've talked about that state, and all the ones, including the representation at our state legislature. So Mr. Terrell is in a competition to be the winner, and you need to make a choice and vote. And so please don't miss the point, is that we need to have the right representation. And you can't get there in the barbershop talking about who this and that. You got to vote. It only takes a minute, and you can have the ballot sent to you out. So I'm just hoping that we get the point this year, like never before, and vote, vote, vote. So if you see some big picture of a guy on a billboard, it could be me, or it could be Terrell McKinney. And so vote for everybody on a billboard. But get involved. Even if you're not involved every day, go ahead and get your vote done. And not only that, tell Pookie to register and vote.
Right. And again, Preston, I thank you for coming on and talking with us tonight. I really enjoyed the conversation. I definitely wish you the best, you and your wife the best, making sure you guys stay safe through this pandemic. And if you ever got anything to ask me or anything, just I'm one call away. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you very much, and I wish you well. You should do well. You, as I've said in public, you are our future, part of our future. And so I wish you well in this race. And I think you'll do well. And so congratulations on running a good campaign, a good working campaign. I'm surprised you really got your signs out and got your materials out. And I might have to think back and see if you got all of that from me, or you learned that on your own. But I remember some of the sessions we had, and you remembered some good stuff. And I'm sure you have good advisors, but you are a good asset to our community. And I, as an elder, bless you in every way. And I'm not one to just throw that out just because I'm on somebody's Zoom. So best of luck. We only have 26 more days. Time is moving fast, buddy. Anything I can do to help you, you let me know. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.